for the Kuku Peter side. Do we have his representative here, or is he here in person? Okay. We'll move to the next, and that's Mr. Ezekiel Oyeni Ajao, FNCS, the Executive Director of Nigeria Interbank Settlement Systems, PLC. Please, let's put our hands together for him. He will be talking on blockchain, fintech, and financial inclusion. Okay, we have, sorry, I was looking at page 29, and on page 30 we have the chairman for this plenary session, Mr. Ibrahim Tize, FNCS. Can we put our hands together for him? Apologies for that, sir. And that makes my way to the chairman to coordinate this session. And we have 1 hour for this session. So the discussant will be talking for 10 minutes each. Okay, sorry. All right, thank you. Okay. So we have 1 hour for this session. And for the discussant, they're going to spend 10 minutes each for each of the topic. I understand that some of us have presentation, but we have to make sure that we finish everything within 30 minutes so that we can have 30 minutes of interactive engagement between the panelists as well as the discussant. At this junction, I would like to hand over to the chairman, Mr. Ibrahim Tize, FNCS, to anchor this session. Can we put our hands together for them once again? Thank you.
President, NCS, distinguished fellows and elders, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. We are far behind and we are going to go straight into the presentation sessions on this session. The first paper on this main theme of towards an inclusive digital society and economy will be delivered by no other person but the founder and CEO of Men One, Ms. Opeke, and the topic, as we've been told, is infrastructure and disruptive innovation, connecting the connected. We are told the time is 10 minutes. So may I have the pleasure of inviting the MD CEO of Men One.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Okay. The President, Nigerian Computer Society, distinguished past presidents, members of the executive, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Permit me to stand on existing protocols and dive right into this issue of disruption and infrastructure, how we connect the unconnected, or perhaps the opportunities with the unconnected in Nigeria, and how that really is something that we will need to address to ensure we have digital inclusion, which is the theme for this conference. The lack of infrastructure really in ICT is one of the critical issues hindering our development. Not just lack of infrastructure in ICT as we know, but we also have other areas of critical infrastructure that we are lacking in Nigeria. So start with the road network, start with electricity, which are critical ingredients for development. However, if you look around the world and you look at economic development over the past 50 years, clearly we are now in a digital economy, and so access to internet, issues of broadband become really critical for going forward. And never mind the fact that we're still playing catch up in some of the other areas of infrastructure. But we know for sure that without the infrastructure that's necessary to digitally transform our society, we are going to be continually left behind. The digital governor, in his address earlier, mentioned some of the countries such as South Korea, Singapore, when we look at what's going on in China, in India, in some of these economies. Clearly, we can see the role that ICT is playing. We can see the role that broadband is playing. And likewise, we believe we in Nigeria have the potential to transform our society and create new opportunities for growth for our economy by accelerating our broadband journey. We have the opportunity to leapfrog centuries of investments made in recent markets, in more advanced markets. If we look at recent developments in places like India, where Reliance has rolled out a network that actually is impacting on GDP growth in India this year by deploying a 4G network that has connected more than 300 million subscribers within a period of just over 1 year, then we can see what the potential of infrastructure deployment is, even in a large market like that. And that impact cuts through jobs, direct jobs in ICT and in the industry. It cuts through other industries where the application of technology is able to drive increases in productivity. It brings about transparency in society because transactions are digital, automated. There's less opportunity to ask for gratification when you are making a payment online, or for the file to be missing when it is digitally submitted and encoded, and also creates an opportunity for wealth generation in society. Before I dive in and just talk about some of the challenges we have and the opportunities, realizing I have only 10 minutes, I would say South Korea is a good case in point. War devastated, agricultural economy. In the 1960s, after the Korean War, GDP per capita in Korea was less than $155 per person, very close to where we were, or perhaps at some point, Nigeria was even ahead of Korea in terms of GDP per capita. South Korea leveraged technology. They've been very aggressive in the deployment of infrastructure. First, to bring telephony services to their people, and then in the late 1990s to bring internet access to all of their society and to really transform their society to a knowledge-based economy. Today, South Korea is globally ranked as the #1 country in terms of being internet enabled, and they've increased their GDP per capita to almost $36,000 per person. So we want to compare that with Nigeria, where we are between 2,500 and 3,000, depending on the exchange rate of the day. So that's about a 10x, more than a 10x improvement over where we are in terms of GDP. South Korea's Samsung is today the #1 selling mobile phone globally, with even greater market share than Apple and Huawei. So small island economy, devastated through the war, decided to apply knowledge and technology, and they've totally transformed their economy. Previously, we would not buy a South Korean automobile. I think today in Nigeria, anyone getting a new Kia or Hyundai is very happy to have one of those vehicles. How did they achieve this feat? One, policy, significant policy intervention to create and support local companies to become globally competitive and to export. We have a lot of these policies. How impactful have they been? Deployment of broadband infrastructure, which enabled Korean enterprises compete and drive quality in their market. Incentives provided by the government for people who were going to make the investments, businesses that were going to make the investments to develop the economy. And also wide adoption of e-commerce services and solutions. So in Korea as well, a lot of educational programs put in place, not just for the young ones, but for the adults in society, so everyone could access government and social services online. Nearly 100% of households in Korea today have internet access, and it has also helped literacy rates, which is at a high of 98%. On the African continent, and I won't go into details, we also see countries like Kenya who have even more challenging GDP statistics than Nigeria, putting us in that country are being connected to the internet. Likewise, Rwanda, which has made a policy of including ducts for the deployment of telecommunications infrastructure in all roadways and public infrastructure being connected, and also has deployed nationwide 4G networks for coverage end-to-end across that recently embattled nation. So where is Nigeria in all this, and how do we rank ourselves? I believe some of the recent statistics indicate that our broadband penetration rate has stagnated between 21 and 22% for the past 3 years. And in 2017, Nigeria was ranked 143rd globally in the ICT Development Index of the ITU. On the African Index, we were number 15th behind countries like Mauritius, South Africa, Kenya, Rwanda, Morocco, Egypt. Some of those countries continuously show up much higher than us on the digitization journey. But it's not really just about the statistics, because we can see so many examples of the current state of our infrastructure when we look around us. It's about the continued deployment of 2G and 3G technology at a time when such networks are being pulled out of service in advanced markets in favor of 4G and 5G technology. It's about digitization of services, where in most markets, not just government services, but most social services or consumption services that you have, be it the delivery of television, be it educational materials, be it ordering your food, your groceries, trying to see the doctor. A lot of other services are things that you will just get online. Finally, one area is increased machine learning and Internet of Things. Smart homes, smart vehicles. The view is we're going to have 25 billion connections globally by 2025. And when you look at all the statistics and you look at where we show up, the percentage of connectedness that we bring is still less than 1% in some of those critical arenas. So clearly, we have some catching up to do if we are indeed going to be included in the digital future that is pervasive all over the world. What is hindering Nigeria's broadband growth? One, limited infrastructure for full coverage to our cities, especially secondary cities. Our cities, the largest cities and the largest urban centers are overbuilt with phone companies duplicating infrastructure, and we do not have a good framework for sharing infrastructure so we can extend the reach of the infrastructure to secondary cities and our rural areas. When you look at statistics like fiber to the tower, in some countries, even in South Africa, they're starting to approach numbers like 50%. In Nigeria, the number of our towers connected by fiber is still less than 10%, and those are largely, our towers are largely connected by microwave, which has limited capacity to backhaul the kind of information we want to download on our smartphones today. There is continued misalignment, is what we see, that's hindering deployment of that infrastructure between the government, regulatory agencies, the mobile network operators, and other players in this segment in terms of what are the objectives, what is good for the economy, what is good for Nigerian citizens, and what policies and practices do we need to adopt collectively to drive our society forward. It doesn't help that in recent years, with the recession and the devaluation of the naira, a lot of the inputs that you need to expand networks and expand capacity in our market require foreign exchange, which is increasingly difficult to come by. And when you look at a population that's already facing very high inflation rates, the amount of naira that consumers have to spend cannot match the rate of growth in terms of the dollar investment. I'm told my time is up. I'll try to take 2 minutes and wrap up. So why is it important? Why is it important that we get this infrastructure? And I think I'm preaching to the converted here, but it's everything from jobs, direct and indirect. I think the greatest enabler of jobs, of wealth creation in the 21st century is information technology. I think I just read in the news this morning coming down that Jeff Bezos is now worth 150 billion, and I think that is the wealthiest person in modern times. And if you look at all the individuals who have generated, and the companies, it's not about individuals, it's about the companies that have created the most economic value for themselves and their societies in the 21st century. It's based on innovation and ICT. When we look at our companies, our Jobbermans, our Deal Days, our Hotel.ng, our Irocos, Paga, Printivo, and Della Quarterwave, there is no reason why, with the population we have in Nigeria, we're not providing them with the tools and the access to market, first here across Nigeria and then across the continent, so that they can become powerhouses as well. Infrastructure enables that infrastructure, that growth. Infrastructure and the growth of deployment and the pervasiveness of the infrastructure is what has enabled companies like Alibaba and Tencent to achieve the size and scale that they have in India. If we're serious about jobs in Nigeria and improving economic outcomes, then while we need to feed ourselves, and agriculture is really great, if we're doing agriculture well, it would employ 5% of our population because it will be mechanized. And so we will need service jobs and we will need technology jobs. And without the infrastructure, it is expensive and difficult to create those jobs. Where do we go from here? How do we connect the unconnected? It is clear that we need to put higher emphasis on the deployment of broadband infrastructure. The implementation of our national broadband plan, which has been in place since 2013 and lies largely unimplemented, is imperative. We need to rework our policies, especially at this difficult times, to incentivize investment and not view telecom or technology companies as cash cows, but as companies that can really enable development and opportunities to create jobs for our teeming young people. Government needs to enable private sector to make this work. Government needs to enable indigenous private sector, a lot of whom are represented in this room, to get up to scale to make this work, so that we are creating jobs for our children here in Nigeria and leaving something behind for posterity. It is about building for the future and securing the future of Nigerians for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Please, she deserves a better round of applause. You will be taking your notes. We'll take that at the end of the presentation of the three discussants. So we now invite the next presenter, Mr. Kolawole, who is the Special Assistant on ICT to the Oyo State Governor, to make his presentation of inclusive e-government, citizens, poverty eradication, and job creation. A round of applause for him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The President, Nigeria Computer Society, and every other guest here, we want to welcome you to your state, the pace-setter state, where things happen first. This has been said, and a lot of things has been seen, which informed the award you just gave to His Excellency, the Governor of Oyo State, who at times, or most times, I refer to as the political and administrative avatar of our time. Now we are talking about inclusive e-government, citizens, poverty eradication, and job creation.